Hey, gang, your pal Tim here, taking a little vacation time. My wife reminds me that have not had a vacation of any decent sort since I started this podcast 3.5 years ago. So I listened to her very carefully, friends, and I'm going to take a week off. But you're in good hands because we are going to give you a little special presentation this week. I had the great pleasure of being on a friend of the show's, P.F. Wilson's podcast last month. It's called PF's Tape Recorder. And it's a great interview. We had a ton of fun doing it. And it's probably the best sort of encapsulation of why we do this little show. And it's always great to connect with not only PF, but just another kindred soul in the realm of defunct and forgotten sports. So here's the episode number, 466. He's been at this a lot longer than I have, of PF's Tape Recorder that we recorded just last month in July. And we go now to Cincinnati. And thanks very much, PF, for having us. And as always, please enjoy.
Hello there, I'm PF. This is my tape recorder. Coming up, it's Tim Hanlon.
You know, if there was an order in which the efforts were taken, right? I would say sports and challenging the establishment and sticking it to the man and in broadening the players' opportunities was very much second.
Tim is a guy I became friendly with on the internet. I'll explain here briefly. We're not going to do a dumb bit because our talk with Tim ran a little long. Because you see, my interest besides comedy and music, of course, sports, besides, following current sports and the five major sports in this country. I also am a big fan of defunct sports leagues and teams, and I found Tim's podcast quite by accident. There is a Facebook page for one of the defunct leagues, one of the famous ones, the World Football League from the 1970s, and someone had just posted saying that, listen to this guy's podcast. He interviews somebody that used to be part of the World Football League. I think it was Upton Bell, who owned the Charlotte Hornets. Anyway, the Charlotte Hornets football team, not the basketball team. Look it up. It's a fascinating story. Anyway, so I listened to the show and I found more episodes. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. There's another weirdo like me that likes this kind of stuff. And so I got in hold of him. He wound up being a sponsor for one of the companies I work for. So I don't know if I need to disclose that, but I just did. Old School Shirts sponsors Tim's podcast. Good seats still available. Recommended. And so anyway, I reached out to him and said, hey, would you like to come on and talk about defunct leagues with me on my show? And he said, sure. So there you have it. Tim lives in Chicago now. He's from New Jersey. And I think his day job, he's still in some kind of sports media. I forgot to ask him. But anyway, so we're going to do that. We're going to have a song of the week from Youngblood. But here now first is our interview with Tim Hanlon of the Good Seats Still Available podcast.
I can hear you really well. How you doing?
Good. How are you? It's weird to interview someone like you that I've heard a lot, like on a podcast. I interviewed Terry Gross one time years ago, and unfortunately not for my podcast. It was before I had my podcast. But I was like, it's so weird to hear your voice in a conversational manner, not doing an interview on NPR. It was really strange. I'm going to record this on.
I don't know if I can compare it to Terry Gross, but I'll squint really hard and take it as a compliment.
There you go. Yeah. So I was just before I came downstairs here to do the interview. Right, my wife's like, "Who are you doing the interview with?" And I said, "Well, apparently there's another weirdo like me out there who's all about the defunct sports leagues and stuff like that." And I found Good Seats completely by accident. I think I told you this in an email when we first met over the internet. I think it was on the World Football League page. Someone randomly posted one of the episodes about the World Football League and said, hey, there's this pod. It might have been the Upton Bell episode. I don't know. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then I was hooked. So I've been a subscriber ever since.
Well, look, please tell your wife that, I profusely apologize. And, if there's anything I can do to help sort of rectify the situation, maybe a little mediation, whatever.
Oh, no, she's happy because the defunct league's doing really well for us at Old School. So amongst other things. So that's been working out really well. So I know a little bit about your background just from listening to the show. But so you're originally from New Jersey, right?
Yeah, northern New Jersey, a stone's throw, if you will, from Manhattan, and and very much in the vortex, I guess, of New York sports as a kid growing up. So with a little bent towards New Jersey, right? You come up with that sort of, I would call it chip on your shoulder, more like a sort of embarrassment cloak, I guess, because you're in the state that everybody seems to not acknowledge. But we've had our moments in pro sports, and
sure.
I have the scars to prove it. So sure.
I remember one time when Jim Kelly was on. This is after the USFL, and he had been in with the Bills, and people. He said something about the Bills, and the audience booed. Of course, it's a New York City audience, and he goes, "Hey, the Bills are the only team that plays in New York," and everybody went silent. So,
and it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up in the not want to say a stone's throw, but at the a few miles away from East Rutherford, New Jersey, no doubt. I mean, there was a great documentary on NFL Films at some point last couple of years about the New York Giants when they won their championship. I think it was in 80 something in the 80s, and it was narrated by John Bon Jovi, and half of the story is sort of rooted in this is a team that moved to New Jersey, and New Jersey claimed them as their own, and there was this big rift. I mean, Mayor Koch at the time, kind of held his nose and decided he wasn't going to come to New Jersey for the celebration, and there was no ticker tape parade because they had moved to New Jersey and abandoned the city. And I don't know. Growing up in New Jersey, it seemed normal to me, but I was a kid. What did I know?
I distinctly remember from when I was a kid, I might even have a newspaper clipping I can send you of this, because I looked for it to see if this was true. I'm almost positive that when they built Giant Stadium, the New Jersey legislature passed a law that said if you play in New Jersey, you have to be called New Jersey. But then for some reason, they didn't end up enforcing it. They enforced it on the Generals in the USFL. I'm almost positive they were going to be the New York Generals, and the Stadium Commission, whoever ran the Meadowlands, said, no, you have to be the New Jersey Generals. And somehow the Jets and Giants got out of it. But do you know anything about that from growing up, that was going to be the law of the land? You had to be New Jersey if you played in New Jersey?
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I'm not sure if that was sort of coming into the facility or after was a few years of the facility existing that, this is also around the time the Garden State Bowl, sort of that, that college bowl game that nobody sort of cared about or missed, frankly, once it was gone.
That'd be a great episode, by the way, for you. Like all those lost bowl games. The Freedom Bowl? Oh, good.
It's on the list. Oh, yeah, the Astro Bluebonnet Bowls.
Yes. Oh, my God, the Bluebonnet. I got to write these down for old school. Old bowl games.
Freedom Bowl. Oh, my God, there's tons of them. The Raisin Bowl. There's a whole bunch of them. You betcha. The Cherry Bowl. The
Cherry Bowl. Oh, my God.
There's plenty of them.
Yeah. So growing up,
the Cosmos got away with that too, right? So they were known as the New York Cosmos, and then they were just the vaunted Cosmos.
The Cosmos.
For such a period of time, right? So, and then you had a bunch of those teams, sort of as the 80s wore on, they were the sort of dreaded New York / New Jersey something.
I'm wearing a New York Knights sweatshirt right now, which is, of course, erroneously, it should say New York, New Jersey Knights. We need to fix the artwork. But yeah, it was in our reject bin. It didn't print quite properly. So yeah, as I'm talking to you, I'm wearing, from the World League of American Football, a very comfortable New York Knights sweatshirt.
See, there you go. And so for all you Ohio Glory fans listening right now in suburban Cincinnati, you'll know that the World League of American Football was a thing. And we even had some debates with some of our guests about whether that was a true sort of defunct league. And of course it was in my mind. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Domestic teams plus world teams. And that's what made it even more special. You Montreal Machine fans know what I'm talking about.
There you go. Right. Yeah, that's another collection we need to finish. We have about half of the shirts for that one. I don't know if we're going to do the foreign ones or not. I mean, maybe we will. But getting back to the Cosmos. So you are really a soccer guy, first and foremost. Am I correct in that? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I've you have to understand, this show has just been more of a not knowing or thinking that there would be like tons of people out there who would be sort of similar to me. To me, it was just sort of scratching a long time itch to, I guess, I don't know, correct or discover some of the the issues, I guess, from when I was a child and an impressionable youth and being a sports fan and stuff. And for me, yeah, of course, there's baseball and football and plenty of the other sort of traditional sports and plenty of exposure to those games and, grandpa or dad or friends, taking you to games and stuff. But something around, my 10, 11-year-old sort of time frame was playing soccer, which was a relatively unique thing in suburban New Jersey. Wasn't sort of nearly as widespread as it is today. And then this guy named Pele, and then I vividly remember in 1976, this was Pele's second year. He didn't come, but a bunch of his teammates did to give our rec team our little trophies for having a great season.
Oh, wow.
And they handed out, black and white autographs of themselves and, this thing, the New York Cosmos schedules and what they're playing is, a schedule at Yankee Stadium. And then sure enough, the year later, they were playing in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And so we had no choice but to go and drag my parents to go. And by 1978 and beyond, we were season ticket holders. So
oh, wow.
It was an impressionable young all-American males kind of sports thing. I grew up a New York Giants football fan and a New York Yankees baseball fan and all the traditional stuff. But this Cosmos thing was more tangible to me because we could go, we went regularly, and I was playing the sport. And then it didn't take long, but obviously in as times wore on, right, to recognize that this was truly a white-hot comet, not only in terms of it coming and going, but the fact that the assemblage of stars was, like years before the Chelsea superstardom kind of model that exists today in world soccer. So, only in retrospect do you realize sort of what a special time it was, even if it wasn't all those star-studded players and all that sort of, white hotness. It still was impressionable enough to last to leave a lasting impression on me for better or for worse. So, what happened to all these teams and all these great logos? And that just sort of became, I don't know, sort of a part of my DNA, I guess. And now we get to kind of explore it. Maybe it's sort of part therapy and part curiosity.
Yeah.
But, I am shocked after 3+ years of doing this, how many people stumble across. What I have found, though, is this, and maybe this is your next question. I think a lot of this, a couple of themes sort of evolved. One of which is a lot of it, a lot of our listeners tend to be male, which is hardly a surprise.
Yep.
But it tends to be a similar impressionable period in their lives, usually around adolescence and or, teenage years, when they first sort of recognized there was this pro sports thing. But also the other sort of thing is that everybody has their own thing, their own geography, their own, what their lives were like, for better or for worse, and their families, the attachment to sports and why, which are generally unique things. But it's always sort of this passion that it's part of one's childhood that, means different things to different people. For me, I've just expanded it into the entire realm of defunctness and relocations and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But to me, what I found is that most people, very few people sort of exhibit the same sort of, shall we say, mental illness that I have with respect to all this stuff generally. But it just takes time. And once you stumble across something that is special to an individual about a particular team, a particular city, a particular league, then it just becomes, amazing. Usually they'll wait for the next time said topic comes up. But, you kind of scoop up a few people along the way. And they come along for a merry ride of wackiness that is just general, not specific.
Yeah. It's weird because we're probably around the same age. And when I was in the late 70s, by the time you were a season ticket holder for the Cosmos, my best friend behind me, Nick June, was a phenomenal soccer player. And so we were big fans of the NASL and then also of the Major Indoor Soccer League. But what was strange, I only played 1 year of organized soccer. Our team was terrible. We were 0-10 or 11, and we tied once with a team that never played from the next town over. So I didn't pursue it on the field. But what I always liked about the North American Soccer League and the MISL, even though I enjoyed the game, I liked the logos and the team names and the organization of it all. And my friend, of course, liked the soccerness first and those other things secondarily. So we got on great. Following both of those leagues. And then before that, I was a fan of Rebel Leagues before I even knew it because I was a Cleveland Crusaders fan. And I guess at some point I must have realized there were two different leagues and that we were in the Rebel League. And it was only in the past week, by going through some newspaper archives, I figured out the secession of the Crusaders to the Barons, which was an interesting story. And but you're right. You're exactly right. It's at that point in your life where you discover sports and you happen to, stumble onto these Rebel Leagues, serendipitously, and it just sticks with you.
I think some of it also revolves around what media was at the time, too, because you have to remember, you young whippersnappers out there today, you didn't have everything at your fingertips, right?
No.
So your local newspaper, for me, the Bergen Record, or ostensibly some New York City papers, too, like the Daily News and the New York Times, occasionally the Post or Newsday, that was basically it. So, again, blessed because the Cosmos were such a big thing. They were covered with regularity. But what I found was that, finding stuff that was going on with the rest of the league, was kind of like it would drip out in various places. Maybe, in later years, ESPN would have a little half-hour soccer show with Bob Lee, talking about around the NASL. Or, if you wanted to know what was going on with the Edmonton Drillers or the Caribou of Colorado, you had to really kind of squint hard and look at the agate. And try to divine, in the line score or worse, late game, right? You couldn't get the score because the game started at 11 o'clock Eastern time.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But that was maddening. But usually when those statistics came out, like, the box scores or the attendances, that to me, that was a fascination thing, too, because here I was when a Cosmos game's, 40, 50,000 and a whole hefty bunch of sellouts. Right. And then you watch a game that they went and played in Las Vegas or Hawaii or the California Surf, and they only got like 10,000. Like, well, what's up with that? So it was just curiosity after curiosity. So.
And the thing, too, about getting information, I remember the way I discovered the World Football League. I've going through my football cards. I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. I'm looking at the Paul Warfield card. Oh, I know he played for Miami. I think he was on the Super Bowl team and all that. I just gotten into pro football. And I'm looking and it says Memphis WFL, and then back Cleveland. And I asked my dad, I'm like, who's not a huge sports fan, what's WFL? What's that? He goes, oh, that was some league from a couple of years ago. This is probably 1979. For a couple of years ago, it didn't last very long. Well, I had to know more at that point. And the almanacs in the library, you could go back to 74, 75, look at that. But man, finding any kind of nugget of information about the World Football League was terribly exciting. And really didn't know anything until...
That's how I found out about the International Volleyball Association, was in the For the Record section of Sports Illustrated. Right? There was literally like a little sort of like blurb. There was no like... I mean, there might have been one article, like one issue that I didn't read for whatever reason about Will Chamberlain and the league starting. But then I would constantly look at the For the Record section, which was generally kind of like the weekly agate, if you will, of news and notables kinds of things. And a lot of the smaller leagues out there, American Soccer League, for example, was also, so those rebel leagues, so to speak, when they weren't getting major coverage from the main publication, you would see it in there. And that's like, again, it's just another sort of, head scratcher. Like, well, I'd like to find out more. And again, no internet, no, you have to really search out and sort of seek out, like, find out information.
Well, it wasn't until I got to college that I got my hands on two really good books about the World Football League. One, of course, is Breaking Game Wide Open, which is like almost your Bible, I understand.
I am staring at my tattered, torn copy right now.
Yeah, I love that copy. And
her back is a picture of Gary Davidson with a first-generation looking WFL football.
There you go. Hold that thought on Gary Davidson, because then the other good book is the Herb Gluck book, While the Getting's Good. You've read that?
I haven't.
Oh my God, you got to find that. I got it.
It's like the Holy Grail, isn't it?
I was able to get the library used to have the Gary Davidson book here in Cincinnati. They got rid of it, and I had to get it from the library in Akron. They have an exchange program, so you might be able to find the Herb Gluck book. But oh yeah, I highly recommend that one. It's for folks listening. It is about the World Football League, but it's mostly about the New York Stars, later Charlotte Hornets. And a fantastic book. So, but now that we've got on the World Football League and Gary Davidson, because I know the icon on your email is Gary Davidson behind the World Football League logo, I will ask you, because I have no one else to talk to this about, Gary Davidson, visionary or huckster?
Well, both, sure.
Okay.
And I think you could put into that category one of our previous guests as well. I mean, the guy who was sort of behind the ABA and World Hockey Association. I mean, Dennis Murphy was, probably his compadre, I guess, in every sense of the word.
Sure.
Gary, I know, is still with us. I don't know in what shape he's in and if he would ever want to do this show. I mean, I would say that he's, I'm sure, got some stories, but it's clear. I mean, when we talked earlier about the ABA with Dennis, it was very clear, and I kind of pressed him a couple of different ways in trying to be as deferential as possible, given his advanced but still sharp mind.
Yes.
If there was an order in which the efforts were taken, right? I would say sports and challenging the establishment and sticking it to the man and in broadening the players' opportunities was very much second, after the primary goal, which was to make money, and in particular via a franchise model, which was, I wouldn't say P.T. Barnum like there's a sucker born every minute, but there was certainly the functional activity of finding people with checks to get us to 8 or 10 or something viable in terms of ports of call. And if you will, my interpretation, will fill in the blanks as it comes along.
Yeah.
And I think that was essentially the model with the ABA. And it was just certainly, it was lather, rinse, and repeat for the World Hockey Association, for the World Football League, and others, many others, not just within these guys' orbits, but others who kind of looked upon it from afar and said, hey, we can and should do this too.
Yeah. I leaned toward huckster only because of your guest Upton Bell, and I read his book because you connected me with the publisher, and I got a copy of it as well. And after reading his chapters on the World Football League, and also the testimony of Tom Orager, former Chicago Fire owner, in While the Gettin's Good, I do lean more toward huckster, and it's almost like he became more huckster-y from the ABA to the WHA to finally the World Football League, because it seemed at least like with the ABA and the WHA, even though he knew nothing about hockey, he was so interested in starting a league and getting somewhere with it. And with the WFL, it just seemed like he saw dollar signs, and that was it.
Well, so as we've gone through all these episodes, right? So it's not just specific to that league and those guys, right? But some of the themes that come out of this is, number one, they tends to be about business at the end of the day, right? So, to me, it's like big boys and their toys. It's sort of another theme. Why do guys, mostly guys, who have made their money and supposedly shrewd and smart in other lines of work and business, do they keep doing this kind of stuff, or they keep pursuing it? Well, some of it has to go back actually to childhood. It's kind of the sort of rosebud moment, if you will, and if you want to get Orson Wellesian about it. And it's sort of a lost childhood, and they enjoy the game, the sport, the whatever, the trophy, if you will, of running a sports team. But we also get into sort of the economic issues that sort of have become fairly obvious, and one of these is that tension between the franchise model, right, which we're talking about here, and that of a central control kind of thing where it's a single entity. Not unlike Major League Soccer, right? So we had a great set of conversations with the founder of the Arena Football League, Jim Foster, right? And he went out of his way multiple times in our conversations about how he was adamant about not going the franchise route, frankly, because of people like Gary Davidson and Dennis Murphy, who kind of created, if you will, in his mind, and I think a lot of people mind, houses of cards, right? Some of them successfully netted out into some stuff. I mean, just ask the Cena brothers, I guess it is, St. Louis and Indiana. You know, some people made out like bandits. Most did not, right?
Yeah.
And Foster was like, you know what? If I want to control the quality of this product, it's a brand new sport. I will sell individuals or people or entities that want to be a part of this, if you will, shares in the entity. They can have the operating rights. We can give them as much, flexibility and individuality when it comes to markets and stuff. But when it comes to the product, it comes to the ownerships, it comes to the way that the profits or the shared sacrifice of expenditures, that's going to be all centrally controlled. And I think that is a tug of war that continues to this day. And again, MLS, very interestingly, would arguably maybe could now do with a few of the reins being loosened a little bit now that single entity, because is it restraint of trade? Ask the players union, right? I mean, yet without it, you could make the argument you wouldn't have 25 years of Major League Soccer, right? But yet the franchise thing tends to be wobbly too. Just look at the NHL, right? The franchise in Arizona effectively is being run by the league for the last number of years. And there's no shortage of people who are going to pony up now, $600 million, for a team in Seattle. So franchise fees make light work, so to speak. Right?
That's the CFL.
But it's also a house of cards. And there's been plenty of history repeated over and over again that just because you're selling franchise and minting them, I'm a huge Major League Soccer fan, but I'm the first person to tell you that is 30 teams going on 32 a little too much? Possibly. Do I think that people like St. Louis spending, and Charlotte, spending, you look, I don't know. It could be, I don't know. It just seems a little out of whack, especially now given the current times.
Did you ever see the last thing on the World Football League, the NFL Films Lost Treasures, the World Football League edition?
Yes, I did. And,
yes.
With the great sort of little story in there with John Dockery walking through the
yes. Oh yeah.
The
Downing Stadium.
Normal decrepit Downing Stadium at the time. I thought that was a very poignant story, and it was to me. Like you, I can sense I lapped that episode up. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. And it was some fascinating stuff. It was great. It has never been seen before footage and stuff. You just wish there had been a WFL films too.
Yeah. Well, the two things on that. One is with Gary Davidson explains that, they would come into a town and find like the guy that owned the Sharks, Jacksonville Sharks, was a bra salesman. And he goes, he doesn't want to be a bra salesman. He wants to be a sports owner. So he'd come in and run his little scam, and they'd tell the local newspaper, "Oh, we're interested in talking to this guy." And the sports page would call him, and the guy would say, "I don't know anything about this World Football League." And they're like, "Okay." Then he goes, "Well, I might be interested because the sports page never called him before." And then when you're saying the John Doherty thing, the thing that people don't realize, this is probably a good point to bring this up, is we have, and I've been on radio shows here in town talking about defunct leagues whenever a new league turns up. Is that it's fun to make fun of the owners. A bra salesman owns a football team. Ha, ha, ha. Gary Davidson, the huckster. Ha, ha, ha. And not so much about Upton Bell. I think Upton Bell was in the right place. But what people forget is, and this is very noted in the USFL documentary 30 for 30, is that it's the players want to play. And that's serious. That's not funny. That's nothing to make fun of. These guys, they can't quite make the NFL, or something went wrong, or they're just on the line there, and they just want to play pro ball. And that's true, of course, for the the hockey leagues and the basketball leagues as well. And I think people sometimes forget that.
And I think football is especially prone to that, right? I mean,
yes.
It's always been sort of in the last 2 years, we've seen two flameouts of hope to expand the pool of professional players, and the AAF for its reasons, and the XFL. We think is done, but I think it's going to come back out of receivership in some way, shape, or form. And, a lot of these people to a man want to play. I mean, there's a point at which, they have to make their economics work over time. But
sure.
There's always that dream, that last sort of chance and then that opportunity. And look, I would also throw that out to not just the players, but it's also people who want to be referees. People want to be coaches. People want to be announcers.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
It expands the pool there. we had Upton Bell conversation was terrific. I'd highly encourage your listeners, if they not listen to that, because that's a really good insight. Because here's a guy who, really was not getting a fair shake, especially given his lineage in the NFL, and wanted to prove himself in a fledgling, semi or almost directly competitive league with the WFL. But on the announcer side, you look, we've had a ton of great sportscasters. I mean, Bob Carpenter got his start really with the NASL and then MISL indoor soccer. JP Dellacamera made a career out of being if you can believe it, a soccer broadcaster, which is now a thing in this day and age.
Bob Costas.
Costas with the ABA and the Spirit, but we had a great conversation, probably one of our best, with John Sterling, the longtime New York Yankees broadcaster. This is a guy who got the rights for the New York Golden Blades of the WHA to play, to the radio rights and did the play-by-play as part of that. He called New York Stars games, and he recounts a wonderful little anecdote. We just happened to find the clip just out of pure luck. He was talking about like the first game that they were doing with his colleague, a former football player whose name escapes me. He said that they're all set. They're sitting up there in Downing Stadium. There's 10,000 people rattling around, and it's not a great night. And he's live on, I guess it's WOR radio, which is a big signal. And they forgot to string a phone line. They forgot to string a radio line up there. So they had to phone in the game. Literally, it's a phone call, and they're sharing the phone between the two of them.
Wow.
Calling the game, and it's hilarious. And we got the clip embedded in the show. But John and all these others, to a person, just they talk about how crazy it was, but they also and it's not even wistful. It's like they were some of the most fun and great learning experiences, and there's always a fondness when we have those conversations with those guys. And again, it's them too. They're young, they're hustling. They're trying to make a career out of this sportscasting thing. And look, it's a gig, right? And it's pro enough where there's going to be a broadcast or a television presentation or something. And it builds the tape, if you will, for their later exploits. And, there's plenty more of those out there that we've got on our list that we want to get. Vern Lundquist. We want to get, there's so many others out there that are just, have these great stories of kind of paying their dues, if you will. Brad Sham down in Dallas, with the Dallas Tornado. So many others out there.
Speaking of the Dallas Tornado and soccer and stuff, I've always wanted to get your opinion on this, and I think I kind of know what the answer is. You had a guy on your show who was I don't know if he was a broadcaster for the North American Soccer League or a consultant, but anyway, hated indoor soccer. Thought it was an abomination. And I know there were a lot of people that were like that. Now, my friend growing up, he liked both indoor and outdoor soccer. He wasn't a purist by any means. And I think most people, soccer fans in this country of our age, liked the indoor game. Indoor game an abomination or a viable sport? I know you had the guy from the LA Lasers on just a few weeks ago thinking it should be the third most popular sport in the country.
Well, look, I still love, but I think it was sort of at a certain point in time. I mean, the very late 70s, early 1980s, when the NASL was starting to kind of wobble, and by 83, 84, it was veering way off course into basically oblivion. And this indoor game was a hell of a lot more fun and exciting. I don't think it's an abomination. I think actually it was. We've had Ed Tepper, the co-founder of that league, and a whole bunch of others. I think a lot of folks, maybe it was a sign of the times, or I don't know how much it was sort of a casting aspersion to the outdoor game per se. That's a natural comparison, but you're really talking about a sport that was just fun to watch, very exciting, a lot of scoring. Certainly, it seemed to have more scoring than the NHL. The NBA was certainly a little, it wasn't sort of as hugely popular as it was today. And it was an event. It was exciting. They added with pizzazz and extra sparkle and splash. And to me, it was just kind of fascinating. And yeah, there was a time, you're talking to one of the, handful of people that was actually a New Jersey Rockets season ticket holder.
There you go.
Not even full season in 82. That to me, it was the outdoor game was starting to lag a bit. And you look at this indoor game, it was faster, it was more and more skilled than outdoor, right? You got to make quick decisions, you got to make quick passes, and it's a hell of a lot more running and a higher speeds for an extended period of time. I don't know. I just found it exciting, and then when you layer in, right, some of these crowds, like in the St. Louis Checker Dome, and I mean, just the crowds would just get so into it, and they get pumped up with the music and stuff. It was just fun. It was just a lot of fun. I mean, Cosmos games were fun. I don't know how many NASL games around the league outdoors were fun, but then and then when the NASL was in and out again with the indoor game, it just seemed to validate it on some level. And I think people have to remember that circa 85, 86 or so, there was no real top tier outdoor soccer league. We've talked with a bunch of people, right? It was a lost almost decade or so between that and the World Cup and then the founding of MLS, right? And it was like if you're a soccer fan, regardless of how you were watching it or enjoying it, it was like a punch in the gut. It really was. It was kind of like, okay, this seems like this maybe is a waste of time, or maybe this was never meant to be. And again, when you were sitting in stadiums, with 78,000 people and watching arguably some of the best players to ever play the game, and then have it basically non-existent 7-8 years later, that's, and plus the layer on top of that, the impressionable youth thing. I don't know. It's just, and that's why you look back and say Major League Soccer and stuff. And is it perfect? No. Is it the best league in the world? Certainly not. I mean, does it have its issues and centrally controlled? Yeah, you bet. But, my God, it's better than nothing. It's a whole lot better than nothing. And arguably, it's now got a fighting, shot at being, one of the top tier leagues in this country. And, the world success will come.
Yeah.
Once the economics and the politics sort of get figured out. But what, you don't know what you have until you lost it. And then for a good 10 years, you were a soccer fan of this country, the 80s and early 90s. You lost it.
Yeah, absolutely. You followed the overseas leagues, or it was nothing. So one last subject I could get your expertise on, turning back to the United States Football League. I know a lot of people have opinions about this, and I sort of have an opinion about this, but it's changed. It's softened a bit, shockingly, given our political climate. But politics aside, and maybe people outside, listeners can go through this whole thought exercise too. If Donald Trump doesn't buy the New Jersey Generals, does the USFL still try to make a suicide run and try to force a merger too quickly with the NFL? Or, conversely, if he is the original owner of the New Jersey Generals, does it happen faster?
No, on both counts.
Okay.
From what I've read and people I've talked to, Jeff Pearlman, of course.
Yes. That guy's an opinion.
He's got an opinion, but he's written the seminal work on the history of the USFL.
Absolutely.
More than enough credit for that.
Yeah.
It's easy to pile on, and obviously Mike Tomlin with the USFL documentary 30, kind of lays it out, onto the doorstep of Donald Trump. And I don't want to give away at the end of the movie, but watch the end of the movie.
Yeah.
I think it's convenient to sort of lay it on Trump's doorstep.
Yes.
And I think for a large chunk of the conversation, rightly so.
Yes.
Because I wouldn't say the entirety of the folly that it became was his fault, but he embodied it. He embellished it. I mean that in every sense of the word, and he was symptomatic of it. And they were, it wasn't a rousing success on a bunch of different levels, yet it could have been.
Yeah.
And I if you take Donald Trump out of the equation, and you hoped and prayed that that John Bassett had lived.
I was just going to say,
a bit longer, right? I mean, I think the league was more Bassett-like in the first couple of years, and sadly was duped and or deluded by Trump in the later years.
Yeah.
And if you read Perlman's book and you sort of read the context, right? We're now living in the Trump world, sort of writ large of all of that, right? The USFL is a microcosm, and it's a great study, I guess, in terms of like what was to come. But it's still a curiosity to me as to why spring football, in its own way, is now not its own sort of robust professional thing. I mean, the AAF and the second coming of the XFL were absolutely correct ideas and are market opportunities. The reasons why they've failed in the last 2 years are, have their own sort of origins. But, could the USF, I think it could be very different had the folly of trying to merge with the NFL and go head to head or go head to head with them in the fall with the ultimate goal of a merger. I mean, you just think that a spring league could have been, maybe more modest over time and self-corrected. I mean, the World League came in the spring too. I think there is a thirst for spring football of a professional variety that knows its place, right? That maybe isn't sort of going to take on the NFL, but as a feeder league or as a developmental league or something that is competitive enough that gives people something to watch and to root for and have some kind of perhaps relationship with the NFL. Look, the NFL doesn't have a minor league system, right? College is effectively their minor league system. And, same with the NBA. I mean, college is really but I think the future really is for the NBA is the G League. As college basketball gets to be more comical and professional and, one and done and transfer portals and all that stuff, I think college football is probably next. And I think the spring is a perfect opportunity for pro football to do that. But, it's probably another decade away now, given failure in the last 2 years.
I liked the new XFL because, and I didn't dislike the first XFL. I mean, I have no interest in pro wrestling at all. One of the owners of the company I work for, huge wrestling fan. I think Darren's actually a big wrestling fan as well. But zero interest in wrestling. And I didn't mind the first XFL. I liked the second version a lot better because they took all of that. Any wrestling DNA was almost completely extracted. And even right in their slogan, for the love of the game, they concentrated on that. What we were talking about earlier is these guys want to play. And that's all there is to it, and no making it an entertainment thing. The game is the entertainment. And I really liked how they got back to that. And it's a shame that, forces out of their control, undid them this year.
Well, and I think the AAF and the XFL had some pretty compelling innovations. And I think the NFL
absolutely.
We'll now look at those a little bit more quickly. And there's a whole bunch of things that could be improved about the NFL for sure. And, to not have that sort of pushing on you. Let's see. I think that the XFL is going to come out of receivership. I think people are going to give it another chance. I think obviously the COVID-19, situation in the next probably year or so at least will probably delay all of that in pro sports generally over time for the near term. But, I still have hope that spring is a window that can support quality professional football. I'm pretty sure of it.
Yep. Well, great, man. Could talk about this all day, but I got to move on to my other job now, my night job. So, and this has already gone on longer than most interviews. Like I said, I could talk about this all day. So anyway, let's plug the show. Good Seats still available wherever you get your podcasts.
That is correct. And we're pumping out once a week or so. And I appreciate your listening. And frankly, also, of course, oldschoolshirts.com, one of our longtime sponsors, and just a hefty amount of great stuff around logos and teams and all that kind of stuff. So we appreciate you in particular and Old School Shirts for sticking with us in our little mutually shared admiration / illness. And
we are digging it
until we're told otherwise.
There you go. Yeah, great. Well, super. And I guess we'll do this again sometime. Maybe we'll meet in person sometime. Have lunch up there. You're in Chicago, right?
I am.
There you go. Well, we'll do that. We'll discuss more defunct leagues and teams and whatnot. And yeah. All
right. Well, edit wisely and don't make me look too bad. I appreciate your having me, and I appreciate. More importantly, I really appreciate your support of the show. It means a lot, and the fact that you've been doing it for such a long time, and I'm amazed at how many people have discovered it, and it continues to grow, and we're going to keep doing it until somebody comes and ropes us out.
There you go. Well, it's good to hear there are more like us that, remember all these weird, leagues and teams and, and things like that, and all the funny and endless stories about them.
Well, I appreciate it on all fronts. And hey, I got to ask you one last question before we go.
Yeah.
You got, as I said in a couple of episodes, and maybe you don't want to share it now, what's the PF stand for?
Oh, it's Patrick Francois. People have asked that before. I was cagier about it in my younger days, but it's Patrick Francois, and it was I was in TV production class in high school, and we were goofing around. The first assignment was just to film each other interviewing each other, and so I was sitting down in the studio, and I could see the monitor up in the control room, and they were typing our names under it, and I said, "Make my name PF." I was just being silly. And it just stuck. Everybody in class just started calling me that in TV production class. I was on the radio in high school, and my radio partner just started calling me PF, and it just stuck. So, and that's...
All right, well, guess what? You're probably going to get called out another episode or two, so just wait.
All right. All right, man.
Let me know when this is out so I can promote it as well, too.
Okay, I will let you. Yeah, I've got Kostaki Economopoulos tomorrow, talking hopefully a lot of football, and then I'll either run him next week and you that the week after, or vice versa. this might be a two-parter at this point. I don't know.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Don't worry your audience.
All right. All right, man. Well, again, thanks for doing this.
Much.
Talk to you later.
Pleasure to do it.
Bye,
Take
Tim.
care. Bye.
All right, our thanks to PF, or shall I say Patrick Francois, for having us on his show. It's called PF's Tape Recorder, and you can find it wherever good podcasts are found. Highly recommended. A great assemblage of all things comedy and music and witty observations and cultural anecdotes, etc. Lots of great guests and stuff. And it's not just in the Cincinnati metro area where PF is domiciled, but also just generally and globally, and highly encouraged to listen. Again, it's PF's Tape Recorder. Thank you again for having us. And we also thank you for listening. Oh, yeah, by the way, PF is a longtime friend of the show by virtue, whether he likes it or not, from his one of his places of employ. It's oldschoolshirts.com, one of our longest and most beloved sponsors. Oldschoolshirts.com, great assortment of shirts from not only defunct leagues and teams and sports, but all kinds of things in pop culture. They could be old movie theaters or bars or restaurants of the past, radio stations and their logos, all kinds of great memories in classic and well-crafted t-shirt form. Oldschoolshirts.com. Make sure you use the promo code GOODSEATS and get 10% off all of your purchases there. So visit there early and often, as they say, and we appreciate you doing so. Not just us, but PF and his friends at oldschoolshirts.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week with a fun-filled regular episode. Thanks for letting me have a little time off. We appreciate it. And until then, please stay safe. And until next week, ta-ta. Bye-bye.